Candidate Jennifer Giattino.
Thank you. I'm running for city council because the 6th Ward needs a councilwoman who is willing to stand up for the residents of our neighborhoods and actively address the needs of the people and the problems that we face. For too long, the 6th Ward has suffered from lack of leadership. At City Hall, we are known as the Forgotten Ward because the current councilman has failed to represent his constituents effectively. We can do better. I have the energy, the determination to get things done and make good things happen. I have proved that my entire life. Now I want to serve you and make this city of ours a better Hoboken. I represent a new approach, not like the old boys club who speak one way on the record and another way on an FBI recording. We need a new approach to really get Hoboken moving forward so we can cut spending, improve our parks, reduce taxes, and clean up our neighborhoods. I pledge to you that I will do more than just seek out new solutions. I will help implement the solutions that work for Hoboken. Thank you.
And as I always forget to say, we allow applause during the opening statements and the closing statements, and we do not allow reaction during the bulk of the debate in the middle part. The next opening statement will be from candidate Greg Lincoln.
Good evening. Thank you, QLC, POG, and the community members for coming out tonight. My name is Greg Lincoln. I'm a strong advocate of honest government, fiscal responsibility, and bettering the quality of life in the 3rd Ward. As the sitting council person, my opponent has completely failed our ward in all 3 of these vital areas. The FBI tapes have shown that he is incapable of being trusted, lying to the public time and again. We can't trust a councilman who changes his story every time that new facts are brought to light. My opponent has failed the city in financial matters as well, from failing to investigate hundreds of thousands of missing parking revenue being stolen to covering up his parents being on the city's health benefits plan. Finally, my opponent has clearly stated in backroom deals his love for development instead of open space. He's waited till the 11th hour before an election to wake up and realize that people want more parks. The 3rd Ward deserves to be honestly represented. The 3rd Ward will only get this when we end the Russo dynasty of corruption on May 10th. Thank you.
Next opening statement, and please correct my pronunciation, Rami Pinchevsky. I'm sorry about that. Go right ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Bob, and thanks to POG and QLC for putting this together. Thanks to Our Lady of Grace Church for hosting us, and thanks to everyone who come out tonight and is watching at home. My name is Rami Pinchevsky, and I'm running for City Council in Hoboken's 4th Ward because I'm tired of the corruption and incompetence that have plagued our great city for so long. We need to elect someone with a plan to solve the budget problems, someone who will keep the system open and honest, and someone who will put the parks first. That is what I am offering. You're going to hear a lot from my opponent about how he wants to work with everyone and a lot about how he puts the 4th Ward first. In essence, the same lip service the culture of corruption and incompetence have been giving us for years. I'm sick and tired of people who stand in the way of progress. I'm sick and tired of one-shot solutions to long-term problems. I'm sick and tired of the political posturing that hurts taxpayers. And frankly, I'm sick and tired of being lied to. That is why I'm running. As an actuary, I have the skills necessary to take an intelligent look at our budget process. I have a plan to lower taxes. I will fight for a better, smarter, less expensive government, and I will make sure we finally have a park in the 4th Ward. Now is the time. We have a smart, hardworking mayor with a clear vision for Hoboken, and I want to make sure we can work with her to move Hoboken forward.
Next candidate, Tim Acapinti.
Good evening. Thank you to POG for hosting us tonight and OLG for providing the space. And thanks to all of you for showing such interest in city government and these elections. Tonight, you will see the difference between myself and my opponent. In many ways, he is the same as the man I ran against in November. He will talk about corruption without showing any evidence. He will talk about reform, but supports politics as usual when it comes from City Hall. He will say he's an independent, but he's running on a slate of candidates supported by City Hall. He would talk about phantom accomplishments and spread lies about his opponent, all in the name of politics. This is the kind of campaign that voters rejected in November. My campaign has been about bringing people together to put progress over politics. In 5 short months, we've made the 4th Ward relevant again. I've shown what can be accomplished when people work together. We have put the 4th Ward first. Thank you.
Next candidate, Michael Russo.
Thank you and good evening. First, I'd like to thank our hosts, People for Open Government, Quality of Life Coalition, and OLG for having us here tonight. And thank you, Bob, as well. And of course, thank everyone for showing up and listening. I hope tonight we have a real discussion about the real issues facing the 3rd Ward. I'm sure my opponent will try to talk about a lot of things that have very little to do with the issues in the ward. But I want you to listen, and for every answer, I want you to ask yourself 2 very important questions. What exactly has he done for the 3rd Ward, and what are his plans to deal with the issues in the 3rd Ward? The people of the 3rd Ward know who has been there for them. They know who has been there to keep the hospital open. They know who has been there to help them take back Madison Street Park. They know who stopped City Hall from bringing the municipal garage to the neighborhood at 6th and Jackson. Mr. Lincoln was nowhere to be found on any of these issues. So while you hear him tonight, and you hear him talk about press releases that he's issued, ask yourself, what has he actually done? He says he'll vote for whatever the mayor wants, and then ask yourself again, what has the mayor actually done?
Next candidate, Eric Curta.
Hello. My name is Eric Curta. I've been a resident, property owner, and taxpayer in Hoboken for 20 years, and I've been attending City Council, Board of Ed, and Zoning Board meetings for almost as long. I got my first taste of civic activism with my involvement in the 1992 referendum that defeated plans for a 33-story office tower where Pierre Park is now today. I've served as president of People for Open Government, vice president of the First Ward Block Association, board member of Hoboken Revolt, and am a commissioner on the Hoboken Municipal Hospital Authority. I have a degree in healthcare policy, planning, and management from NYU, and I've worked at Hackensack Medical Center for 20 years. I am currently working on a master's degree in public finance and community studies at NYU, where I've studied with the former budget director and deputy comptroller of New York City. I've also studied corruption control at NYU Law with the former head of the New York Organized Crime Task Force. I love living in Hoboken, and I would like to see this city reach its full potential. I believe that I have the qualifications and a sincere desire to help Hoboken become a world-class city. Thank you.
Next candidate, Teresa Castellano.
Yes, good evening, and thank you all that were involved in setting this evening up, especially you people who came out in the rain to see it. I'm Teresa Castellano. I am your first ward council person. I wish to continue to serve the city that has given me so much, and I have accomplished a lot in my tenure, but there's still a lot of issues that need to be resolved. I am the person who has the energy, the experience, the intelligence to handle the job. Thank you.
Next candidate, Nino Giacchi.
Good evening, and thank you to our hosts and sponsors. I want to continue as your 6th Ward councilman because I have a plan to lower taxes and maintain property values. I know how to acquire open space by having facilitated the recent transfer of Block A to the city of Hoboken. I know how to improve parks and ball fields because I helped advocate for the funding that is now in place. I want to improve our quality of life by making our streets clean and safe. I want to address the concerns of parking and traffic, and I want to continue to be responsive to my neighbors. I will also work to eliminate government waste and increase accountability for municipal finances. I will ask the tough questions. I know how to make an informed decision I know what's best for the city of Hoboken and the citizens of the 6th Ward. Thank you very much.
All right, that concludes our opening statements. We're going to start with the questions on the cards now. You'll all have 90 seconds to answer each question, and I'm going to begin with something rather overall, which is dealing with what we spend as a city and the budget. We have a couple of cards on this. One is how would you cut the budget? Another is what is your view on how the budgetary surplus should be handled? And we'll begin with Mr. Pinchevsky.
Thank you. It's a very good question. As a homeowner in the 4th Ward, the budget, the taxes are extremely important to me. And having a plan to lower the budget and lower the taxes while also increasing quality of life, the services we get from City Hall, is also important. I have a 3-point plan to address the taxes and the budget for our city of Hoboken and help the residents of the 4th Ward. One, I want to look and tackle our debt services, which represent 12% of our budget. The question is, why haven't we been looking at this as of now? 12% of our budget. Two, I want to modernize City Hall and update technology, which will also help improve quality of services. And three, I want to continue with the departmental audits that will continue to increase efficiencies as well as reduce spending. As far as the surplus goes, or the reserve fund goes, every single source of municipal professionals and every single New Jersey municipal textbook says 10% is the appropriate reserve. When other people say, let's give 5%, less than 5%, or just refuse to give a number, it's completely irresponsible. We need to be fiscally responsible. Everyone says it, but no one's willing to do it. So again, I say 10% is the appropriate amount, and that's what I would stick with. Thank you.
Mr. Pinchevsky's opponent is Tim Acapinti. I think what I'm going to do is basically try to keep the people together who are running against each other so people in the audience can make a more accurate decision. So we'll go next with Mr. Acapinti on the budget.
Well, I think one of the things we need to do, and from a city's perspective, is stop giving out political patronage jobs. We're seeing it over and over again. The recent hiring of over $150,000 for 2 positions for assistant controllers. It's inexcusable. It needs to stop. We need to cut back on some of these directors' salaries. And also, I work in the city. When I look at our budgets, when you're allocated $20,000 one year and you only spend 10 of it, you shouldn't get allocated $20,000 the next year. You should get 10 and then actually be asked to cut 5% out. But the taxpayers have been overcharged for far too long in this city. It's time to take that surplus, it's rightfully yours, and return it and cut taxes. I believe I was elected to cut taxes, and that's what I intend to do fully. Thank you.
Next, we're going to move to both of the 3rd Ward candidates, beginning with Mr. Lincoln on the issue of budgets.
Good evening, yes. Taxes have already been cut. We've cut spending. We've done a good job. Mayor Zimmer has helped put our fiscal house in order. One of the most important things for lowering taxes is to cut spending. We've done a good job. She's asked her directors to look in specific areas in order to make cuts. At the budget hearings, this has also been done, and everybody is supportive of it on the city council. Now, the additional thing here that was not mentioned was that the directors have already had their own salaries cut by 10% recently as well. Regarding the reserve, now I liken this to operating your own family budget. You don't drain your family budget every month. You don't spend all the money that you have. You don't give it back to to your job or whatever. You need to save some for those rainy days, for when you end up with a flat tire, or you have other emergencies that come. Running a city is really no different than that. We need to have a reserve for two reasons. One of them is in case our sewer breaks, or the waterfront is crumbling, or other things happen. We've seen these happen. We need a reserve fund in order to deal with these emergencies. The second part of having a reserve fund, and why it's so important, is when we do have to borrow money, it helps by having that reserve to give us a lower interest rate on the loans that we do get. So that helps save our city more money in the long term. We need to think long term, not short term. Thanks.
Mr. Lincoln's opponent in the third ward is Michael Russo. Michael Russo on the budget.
Thank you, Bob. If you leave the surplus in the hands of City Hall, they are going to find a way to spend it. Bottom line. You've been overtaxed. My opponent talks about all these different ways where we should cut some spending, or we've already cut some taxes, but the reality is you have been overtaxed. That money is yours. It should be given back immediately. It belongs to the taxpayers. As far as making some additional cuts in the city, political patronage is the biggest one. We have 2 assistant comptrollers that were given their jobs because they were active in political campaigns or they served on a municipal authority. That's not the way you should do business. We need to make cuts in our director salaries, we need to make cuts in the mayor's salary, and we need to make sure that the taxpayers in the city of Hoboken get their money back. Thank you.
We're now moving on to the first ward on the budget, Eric Kurta.
I love this topic. We'll start with the surplus. I mentioned before, I've made a study of this. I'm interested in how city government works and how the budgeting process works, and I've made a point of learning how to do it properly. First day of class, budgeting 101. Have a surplus, have some funds in the bank account so that you don't have to engage in short-term borrowing, and so that when you go out for a loan, meaning bonding, that you have a decent bond rating so that you don't end up spending hundreds of thousands or perhaps millions over the life of a 20-year bond. I asked, it's difficult for a politician to, I suppose, keep a reserve in place. I asked the former Deputy Director of Bloomberg's OMB, Office of Management and Budget, how is it that when it's so easy for a politician to say, I want to give you back that money, or I want to spend it on something, how do you get them to, how is it that they ever manage to keep it in place where it should be, as a plus for not just rainy days, but to prevent the need for short-term borrowing, to prevent the lousy bound rating from making you spend more than you need to on your interest rate? And he said, you know what? It's a matter of character and leadership. That's how you do that, and that's something that we've been lacking here. Anybody that tells you that we don't need a surplus of 5% or greater is a charlatan and a liar. Thank you.
Mr. Kurta's opponent in the first ward is Teresa Castellano.
Thank you. Taxes. 2 years ago, the taxpayers were hit with a tremendous tax from an underfunded budget. The taxpayers were there when we needed them, and now Hoboken needs to give the taxpayers tax relief by a credit or reimbursement. Is this working? Okay.
Yes.
Surplus, $20 million surplus. That figure came from the administration, and when we said give it back, they backpedaled. The figures kept changing. However, a 5% surplus should remain. Budget. This budget should contain a significant tax increase. If you take the surplus, if you take the levy, the tax levy is $54 million, you reduce it by $5 million, you've got a $49 million tax levy. You cut the top salaries, you start at the top. They're part-time employees, either you're here or you're not. We don't really want to have part-time employees where we don't have representation when we need it. You need 1 public relations officer. We are currently paying for 2 assistant controllers who are attending classes during working hours, enhancing their educations, while we, the taxpayers, foot the bill. Thank you.
Now moving on to the 6th ward, Nino Giacchi on the budget.
Thank you. I believe that the surplus should be returned to the taxpayer. We were already hit with a significant tax increase, and although I do believe that a portion should remain as cash surplus, I just remind you that there is a primary bonding source, and that's the County Improvement Authority, for which the municipalities of the county get a reduced and significantly discounted bond rate. Yes, we should have money aside for a rainy day, but you have to inform us, and we have to make an informed decision on how much that amount should be. We also need to streamline government. There's overcrowding in our departments. I think there's now 3 or 4 attorneys in our law department. There's multiple aides and consultants in the mayor's department, and uncounted accountants in the finance department. Streamline. Know what you want and go after it. We can't be spending the people's money needlessly. We have to eliminate that government waste. Those are some of the sources that can be used to eliminate the waste. And yes, you start from the top. Because when you get rid of 10 street cleaners to make up one salary at the top, you will see the difference on the street. Thank you very much.
Mr. Giacchi's opponent in the 6th Ward, Jennifer Giattino.
The only way to reduce taxes is to spend less. I am committed to looking at every service and figure out how we can do it more efficiently. Efficiency saves money. I believe we need to evaluate our departments just like we did the police department. This is where we can save the most. My opponent favors one-shots. That is what led to the state takeover and our insane property increase. As for the surplus, every fiscally conservative city needs a surplus. A surplus is good. It increases bond rating. It enables the city to borrow money at lower rates. We have unsigned contracts, retroactive pay, higher health care costs, lawsuit liabilities, and a failing infrastructure. Giving back is just another one-shot. Next year, who's going to pay for it if we don't have a surplus? The taxpayers or layoffs? That is not a solution. Thank you.
The question reads, is our fire or police departments too big, too expensive? How would you address this issue? So the question is spending on fire and police specifically. We'll begin this time with the 6th Ward, Ms. Giattino. And with the microphone, please.
Thank you. The recent restructuring of the police department not only saved the taxpayers money, but it also put more police on the streets. I'm really, really proud of Sergeant Tristi, PBA President Lombardi, Chief Falco, and the administration in working together to get this done. But we can still get more bang for our buck. As of right now, we have 2 policemen in every patrol car. I think we need more police on the street. And another thing I would like to see is bringing back the police bicycles. Thank you.
Ms. Giattino's opponent is Mr. Giacchi.
Thank you. If you want to maintain your property value and you want your children to go to the parks and be safe, you better make sure that your police are well staffed. And you better make sure that they're on the beat, on the street. I've been walking around. We've all been walking around now during election season. I haven't seen any police walking around. I don't know what the redeployment plan was all about. Those details have never been provided to me. Apparently it's some secret on how to save money. But you know what? It's not making a difference. It's not making my children safe. It's not making my wife safe at 5:30 in the morning when her and her girlfriends take a walk. So no, we're falling short in safety. And we know that because recently there's been a rash of robberies. Our fire department is woefully understaffed. They have come to almost every council meeting begging. We stand to lose funding because of the shortcomings in our fire department.
Moving on to the 1st Ward, Ms. Castellano.
Yes, thank you. Violent crime, make no mistake about it, is on the increase. Every day we see more violent crime. We always had a little bit of crime, but violent crime is on the increase. And I have asked on many occasions for the Public Safety Committee to meet with the public safety officers to address the issue. Now we know that Hoboken has 50,000 people in town, an increase of 20,000 from what we thought, according to the census. We need to increase both the fire and police departments. How anybody could think that there's more police on the street when we lost about 18 police officers is getting fed a bill of goods here.
Eric Curda.
You know, the police department recently saw a reorganization that increased the number of police officers on the street by 15-20%. I know my opponent has been going around telling people that violent crime is on the rise because our police staff has been depleted. But the fact of the matter is that there are more police officers on the street now than there were a year or two ago. Moreover, they're being redeployed to times of day and days of the week when they're needed most.
Moving to the 3rd Ward on Police and Fire, Michael Russo.
Is the police and fire department too large? Absolutely not. Are they too expensive? Yes, they are. But we have done a good job. The unions have come to the table, they've negotiated, and we have reduced some spending in those departments. The fact of the matter is that we hear some politicking up here, and there's words that are being used about police officers on the street. Police officers, not policemen or policewomen. There are, in fact, less members of the department on the street. Maybe their rank is different, but there are less members on the street. There have been a number of retirements. There have been some demotions. So some statements may be factually accurate, but they're misleading. We definitely need to continue the trend of decreasing the spending in those departments, but we also must keep our city safe.
Mr. Russo's opponent is Mr. Lincoln.
The police, we got through. It was a tough time. The mayor and the police union worked together, and we came out better and stronger than before. We do have more patrol officers going out at the times when they're needed, especially at night, especially in the areas where crime has been occurring. Now, what we don't have is a top-heavy police department like we had before, with the restructuring, with the retirements.
Moving to the 4th Ward, Mr. Acapenti.
When we talk about the police department, I'm going to take you back to last year when I spoke out against the audit because it started off on the wrong foot. They started with bad data. They were using the census from 2000. We now know that with the 2010 census, Hoboken's population is over 50,000 people. I have a pretty good suspicion that now our police department is not adequately staffed to represent our needs of our city.
Mr. Acapenti's opponent is Mr. Pinchevsky.
Recently, there was an audit completed for the police department, and there's currently an audit underway for the fire department. So while we don't have the fire department audit yet, I will hold off on speaking on that. But the police department audit resulted in perhaps, I would actually consider it perhaps the mayor's best show of leadership. I mean, the fact of the matter is we had folks coming to the mic, folks like my opponent, and trying to obstruct any single process, any single amount of process we could have with this police audit. But the result of it, by our mayor who stood strong, was the fact that we took our table of organization for the police department, a table of organization that's supposed to be shaped like a pyramid and instead was more of a cylinder, and we right-sized it. I do look forward to the fire audit. I look forward to seeing and using a data source to determine whether or not we are staffed accordingly, and then making decisions based on the results of that audit. Thank you.